On the Underground is a game in which we build, well, underground networks in two cities, Paris and New York. This game comes with a double-sided board, one representing Paris and one representing New York. And yes, the back and the front of the box, which you see now, are basically the same, just different color scheme. And I wouldn't be able to tell which one is which. Oh wait, this is a little bit bigger, so that must be the box. The board is double-sided. I'm gonna show you the Paris side and I'm gonna tell you about the New York side. And I already set up the game for you so you see how the Paris side may look. And I set it up for 3 players. Well, what that means is that each player will get a different combination of colors. Say, for example, this player has pink, red, and orange, and these wooden pieces are used to represent tracks on the board. And depending on the number of players may have different numbers of colors, fewer players, more colors, and so on and so forth. And not all colors are the same, so here, for example, red has more track than the other ones. That is by design. We have player aids reminding us of what scores and other unique elements of each board. We have a passenger who will travel at the end of each player's turn, and we have a deck of cards there indicating the locations that the passenger wants to go to. And there will be 4 of them available face up at any given time, and they're marked with these pawns here. Then we have, for the Paris side only, these objective cards, and if you're familiar with Ticket to Ride, of course, they will look familiar. These are assigned randomly, 2 of them at the beginning of each game to each player, and if the player at the end of the game has lines that connect to these locations, they score that many points. A single card may be scored multiple times if you have multiple lines that connect those stations there. Or a single line may score multiple lines if you have a line that matches the requirement of multiple cards. When we're talking about those lines, again, they're represented by these colors. So you see these are the colors here, and the colors all belong to the same player, but functionally they represent different lines. So this, if I play this one here, the green does not extend the blue. They're completely separate, and they may get in each other's way, but they will still score all together for the same player. So, when it is a player's turn, the player will take 4 actions. The actions can be any combination of collecting one of these tokens, and they are of this shape because pretty much to do anything with them you need 2 of them, so that's a reminder. So you collect one of these tokens and that's it, that's one of your actions. Or you build tracks, so you simply take tracks from your personal supply, any combination of color, and you put them down each for 1 action. The first of each line, so of each color, you can put down anywhere you want. Suppose we're going to put it there. And then the other ones need to connect to it, building at either end of the line. So that would be the red line. So I could build there, or I could build there, but I could not branch out like that usually. And this is why these are important, because by spending 2 of these, you can indeed branch out instead of building at one of the 2 ends. Now you see the connections have a certain number of printed lines that can go through there, and so it may be that at some point that has already been built, so 3 lines are already going through that spot. On the Paris map, so on the New York map, that's it. You cannot build between those connections anymore. On the Paris map only, you can exchange 2 of these tokens to overbuild. They can get really tight and cozy down there in Paris, I guess. Maybe they bribe somebody to allow them to put an extra line. I don't know. What do I know? I'm just a player of games. And so that's for the idea. Now, as you connect to certain things, you will score points slightly differently in slightly different ways on the New York map and on the Paris map. Score points. On the Paris map, you also have these tokens. If you connect to a station that has one of these tokens, like so, and the token hasn't been collected yet, you collect it. There are 5 different kinds of tokens of this type. When you have a complete set of 5, you exchange it for 7 victory points, which is pretty substantial, pretty significant. So, after the player has gone, the passenger will travel. The passenger will go to the location which allows them to walk the least. They don't like to walk. So, for example, so basically the connection that has the least amount of unbuilt tracks. And so, for example, here to go there, there's 1 unbuilt track, or to go here, there's 0 unbuilt tracks. So the passenger will go there, and when the passenger travels, gives a victory point to the owner of each line that has been used. In this case, the owner of the red line scores 1 victory point. This is removed, and we draw another location card to determine the next one. And suppose that the next card says that the passenger wants to go there. Now, here is when it gets interesting. Suppose that there are multiple options to go to locations with the same number of unbuilt. So again, unbuilt track is the first thing. He really doesn't want to walk. But suppose there is a tie there, suppose blue overbuilt there by using these tokens. So, to go here, the passenger now has to choose where to go, suppose that. He doesn't want to go there because there's one unbuilt location and he can go there without walking at all. So now you can choose to use the red line or to use the blue and the green. It's the same number of unbuilt locations, which is 0. He will go with the red line only because when the number of unbuilt locations is the same, 0 in this case, he wants to use the fewest lines possible. So in this case, he has to choose between choosing 1 red line and blue plus green. He'll choose the red line, he'll go this way, and he'll give a point to red again. Well played, red! And suppose then we draw a card and this goes in a completely different location. Boom, like that. This is the general idea. So each time a player takes a turn after they spend 4 actions, the passenger moves, and that means we need to draw a new card from that deck to establish the location for the passenger. And the end of the game is triggered when the deck of location cards is exhausted. When that is the case, the game is over when anybody has had the same number of turns. At the point, you count victory points, which in this case on the Paris map also is indicated by these secret objective cards. And that's it. The player with the highest score wins the game. I was really excited about On the Underground, Paris, New York, when I read the rulebook, when I set it up, and when I started playing it. Because my feeling was that this was going to be a more streamlined version of Ticket to Ride with some ideas in common. That's pretty obvious, I don't think it's a secret, but possibly with more active gameplay. Ticket to Ride was, of course, revolutionary when it came out. It gave you so much agency by the standards of the early 2000s. But by today's standards, which Ticket to Ride contributed to set, there are times in which, well, now I spend the turn just collecting resources so I can build in the following turn. Still good enough, but could it be better? Wouldn't it be better to build every turn? And I liked the idea. I was so excited because On the Underground looked like I can just build track any turn. I entirely skipped having to collect resources to do it. And building those tracks, see them expand, try to score, try to make them efficient, maybe have a very long track that the passenger is likely to travel on a lot, scoring points, and at the same time having some smaller tracks which may be achieving different kinds of objectives. Very, very promising. And I have to tell you, very fun. That element is very fun. And I just like the visual aspect of building all of these interconnecting tracks using those wooden tracks. I like the different secondary objectives that you have on different maps, especially when it comes to connecting things. On the newer side, you have clusters, and you score points by connecting a lot of them. The more you connect, the more points you score. So the tension between building long tracks and scoring to the passenger and getting these small advantages as you go on, that works to me. The branch tiles, I don't know, sometimes I wish that they were a little less expensive to collect, because then you may have some turns which are more similar to Ticket to Ride, in which I spend half of the turn collecting 2 of those tracks, and then I spend my third action to put down a piece of track. So have a turn collecting the tokens and then spending them to put down a track. I think there is a really good, fun idea here. But every time I played it, there was something in the execution that to me held the game back a little bit. On the newer side, the passenger travels twice every turn, so goes to 2 different locations. Say you're busy in New York, but logistically that means that that looking for the correct location, draw a card, everybody's looking for the location, we place the new pawn, and then we do that again. And maybe if you play so many times, or you're from New York, then it'll be like super intuitive and super quick. But other than that, it just slowed down, and it just made the pace a little less interesting to me. And I almost felt like, and yes, I also like something more to score, some other kinds of objectives. I just felt I wanted scoring to be spiced up a little bit. Until you go to Paris, and then it becomes almost too much of a good thing. In Paris, the traveler travels only once per turn, which is exactly what I think the game should be. I enjoyed that. I think that, but it's still a little bit of a break, but not a deal breaker. But the Paris map felt very, very confrontational. And there are random swingy elements in the scoring there. The cards that you get at the beginning, you get 2 and that's it. For the rest of the game, there's nothing you can do to change them. You can't alter them, exchange them. A player may get a 5 and a 5, that's the value of those cards, so they could score 10 points, and and those locations may be very close to each other. You may get cards with a location shared, which happen, and other people don't get locations that are shared. A player may get 2 cards that only score 3 and 3. Right there at the beginning of the game, they have fewer chances of scoring as well as the other player. There is a random element there which I found unpleasant, and there was nothing you can do to change it. Those 2 cards that score 3 or 5, and maybe harder or easier. That's it. And when it comes to those sets of tokens, I like set collection, but there's an either or element which is very swingy. 5 of those tokens, 7 victory points. That's huge. If somebody scores those twice and somebody doesn't, that may beat the game. And so I saw a game that pretty much started like, we're going to build tracks and it's going to be awesome. And it's great, the traveling in Paris. And then it kind of quickly morphed into, how can I get the token that Jim needs so that Jim doesn't get to score that points, I deprive 7 victory points. The certainty of depriving a player of 7 victory points was a lot more alluring than building tracks that the passenger may use now once for 1 point and maybe later for another point. And so, and I think that can be, from the very beginning, knowing this, players can be really annoying from the very beginning and just collect all of one type of token, so the players don't score that. So maybe the set collection could have been a little more nuanced. If you collect 4 of them, you score something. You can choose to still exchange those for those points. You score some, you collect some, you score some. A little bit more, some more points, all of them more points. But that either or makes the search for one token a little too important to me. Also, And this is neither a negative nor a positive. It just means you gotta know your players. The game could be very annoying and could be very analysis paralysis if your players do it. Luckily enough, in my group, we had decided to kind of like go and play as it feels right. Get a sense that the passenger may like to go here, may score you points here, but we did not obsess about everything. But you could, legally speaking, just make sure that you ensure that before you place down each track, the passenger will go exactly where you want them. You could micromanage that, completely killing the pace of the game. This is neither a positive nor a negative. Maybe you have a group where everybody likes to do that, but it's something you have to take into account because not everybody likes that level of micromanagement. So on the underground, I liked the general idea on both sides of the board. I thought that the execution could have been a little stronger. So this is a game which I liked enough, but I really wanted to love it, and so that was a little bit disappointing. Maybe there will be other sets or different rules so that these sets can be played with, that these maps can be played with, which will make the game as great as I believe the game system can be.